Did any of the following actually happen as described in these scary stories? I saw Dogman's shadow on my window shade. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I used to laugh at the part of your show where the shadow of the Dogman walks back and forth past the warehouse window. I don't anymore though, since I've seen essentially the same thing in real life. Let me tell you about it. I'm currently living with my son and his family, a situation that none of us expected to last this long. I moved in last year, thinking it would be a couple of months and then I'd be back at my rental. Instead, I lost my job, let the apartment lease run out, and moved into here more permanently than I had hoped. I've recently found a new kind of employment that I hope is pandemic-proof, and things are becoming hopeful for me getting my own place again. In the meantime, though, I sleep in the bedroom around back facing the wood line. My son, his wife, and his 2 teen sons use 3 out of the 4 bedrooms upstairs, with the last one serving as a home office for my son and his wife. Because I sleep on the ground level, I sometimes see people walking around outside. My daughter-in-law had fancy outdoor lighting put in so that you can always see where you're going in the night, and also to light the home dramatically. It lights up my room at night, so I have a couple of good reasons to keep my shades drawn. I don't want the neighbors looking in, and I don't want to be blinded at night by the outdoor lighting. With the shades drawn in that way, I can always tell when someone is walking up from the wood line toward the house. The boys have some friends who live on the other side of those trees, so it does happen from time to time. When they walk past, they cast big shadows on the curtains, and it can be unnerving the first or second time you see it happen. Even when I'm facing away from the windows, people walking past darkens the interior of the room, and it can be quite startling. I've gotten used to it though, and I've also come to instantly recognize the appearance of a human's shadow on those shades. I can tell roughly how far they are from the window, and I can tell their relative size, so I can usually guess which shadow belongs to which of the neighbors. So, when I looked up at the window one night back in December, and I saw the shadow of a Dogman, just the same as on your show, I was pretty sure that I wasn't looking at a human being. It looked to me like the Dogman had walked bipedally up to my window, and then it was just standing there, staring at something. Maybe my window. It didn't stand perfectly still. It seemed to be shifting its weight, and its ears were fidgety, but basically it had walked up to my window and stopped. It was like a nightmare come to life, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. In a reverse of the way things used to be, I ran to my son's bedroom that night because I was scared. We both chuckled about it, but I really wanted him to come down to my room and verify that I wasn't losing my marbles. Now, we don't live in an area known for Dogman sightings, as far as I know at least. We are not in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Louisiana, or Michigan. I won't say where we are, but there is a history of Sasquatch footprints being seen around here. I don't know anybody who's told me they've seen a Bigfoot themselves, but the majority of my personal friends think that they do in fact live in this area. Not my son, though. He never believed in anything that he couldn't hold in his hands. For the most part, that kind of an attitude will help you get through life. He was always far more practical than I've ever been. On the other hand, it could be argued that the boy sometimes lacks imagination in his outlook. He always takes the standard view. He always reads the manual before assembling things. His life always seems so ordered. And if you don't notice that, he'll point it out to you. As you can imagine, he came to my room downstairs grudgingly, mocking me the entire way. At first I took it good-naturedly, but less so, as he continued to rub in how much more level-headed he felt he was. By the time we got to my room, I expected the shadow to be gone, but to my surprise, it was still right there, still twitching its ears, still unmistakably a Dogman shadow like you show on your YouTube channel. When my son saw this shadow, he started laughing, and he went right back to mocking me. I began to lose my temper at that point. If it's not a Dogman, I demanded, then you tell me what it is. My son looked at the window, puzzled over the shadow on the shade for a while, then shrugged his shoulders and said it was an optical illusion of some sort. There's only one way to know for sure, he said blandly while strolling over to my shade and pulling it up. Right there. On the other side of that window was the nastiest looking living creature I've ever witnessed. It looked like it had been through 1,000,000 battles and had a scar still visible from each and every encounter. It looked like it rolled in its own poo and never took baths. It looked like it had no instinct to groom. It stood taller than a bear, and yet it looked more like a man than a bear. If not for its wolf-shaped head, I would have thought that it was in fact a human born with some kind of excess hair, like a modern caveman. But this was a creature that only resembled humans. It only appeared to be like us. It was not a child of God like the rest of life on planet Earth. This was more a child of another kind of deity entirely. This was something born with the ability to instantly bring intense fear to any human being. It resembled us just enough to instill a dreadful sense within us that we are witnessing something that just shouldn't be. It isn't only ugly. It isn't only a threat to our safety. It's an abomination created to mock us and anything good that there is. I saw my grown son's face reflected back at me, and I saw his expression change. I watched as the smugness dripped straight down off his face, and I observed pure terror replacing it. I watched his eyes widen, and I saw his pupils dilate. It took a little time for his mind to process the data that his eyes were taking in, so there was a delayed reaction, really. The hideous thing on the other side of those thin panes of glass leaned forward and began barking hard in my son's shocked face. I could see that this was, in fact, a very real, upright walking, werewolf-type creature. It had teeth that looked like comedic exaggerations of a dog's teeth. When his mouth opened, it was far larger than my son's entire head. This foul-looking beast man could have bitten off a grown man's head in one bite, and it was furiously growling and barking at my own son just a few feet in front of me. And then my son pulled the shade back down, turned around robotically, and walked out of the room, saying to me, "Dad, you're going to sleep upstairs in the office tonight." In fact, I've been sleeping on a cot up there in the office ever since then. I use my bedroom downstairs during the day, but at night, I'm a little too unnerved to be down where a man-sized upright walking dog is just on the other side of the window. It's a little too much like living in jungle habitat. So no thank you. The cot I've been sleeping on has a bar going across the middle of my back that's giving me a condition. But if I can last here about another 5 weeks, I might have gotten my own place by then. If not, it can't take too much longer than that. It's not that I don't love living with my family, because I do. It's just that I saw Dogman's shadow on my window shade. Don't go anywhere. We've still got the Dogman chasing the bear up the tree story coming up. But first I want to thank our most recent channel member, Todd Graves. He's Todd Graves. The whole crowd raves. He's the best since mankind lived in caves. Todd Graves joined our channel memberships at the 99-cent level, which allows him to see our secret uncensored stories each Sunday night. If he had joined at the $3 level or higher, he would also be able to check out our 15 hours of archived uncensored members-only stories, and so can you. Just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or do what Todd Graves did and click the join link under this video. But you don't have to join anything to see this next free public Dogman story, and this is the one that you saw in the thumbnail tonight. It's the story we call I Saw Dogman Chase a Bear Up a Tree. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a New Jersey Dogman story for you that also involves a black bear. This happened around 15 years ago, so I might get some of the details wrong, but I'll try to remember as well as I can. I had been entertaining a crazy friend of mine who had struck it rich and bought his own small plane. We were having a wild week of partying when he got a sudden phone call that ruined the mood. He insisted that he had to fly out of there right away and asked me to give him a lift to the airport that's out near Crossley Nature Preserve. I remember I was driving along some highway. Looking at Google Maps, I'm gonna guess that we were on County Road 530 on that gloomy evening. We came upon a sort of a dirt road coming off of the highway, and my pilot buddy insisted we take it. I was skeptical, but he insisted it was a shortcut. Well, it was anything but that. In fact, if you ever find yourself on County Road 530 in Toms River, New Jersey, don't take the right onto the dirt road. Besides the fact that I think it might be a private road, there's also the story of the bear and the Dogman that I'm about to tell you. Buckle your safety belt, because here's where the action starts. The so-called road was more like the driveway from hell. My car was bouncing, I was hearing gravel and pebbles pinging my underside, and I was not seeing how this was going to end up leading us to the airport. In fact, it does not, but I was just going on instinct when I felt that way on that night. We didn't have GPS, we didn't have maps, we were making it up as we went along. We were wasting our time, yes, but we were also unwittingly driving straight into some very real danger. Around a slight turn in the road, we saw, in progress, a tree tipping over and falling down. My pilot friend at first shouted timber as a joke, and I honestly expected to see a lumberjack holding an axe standing at the foot of it. I did not see a lumberjack at the bottom, though. What I did see was a big old black bear holding on for dear life at the top. Needless to say, I stopped the car as I couldn't risk getting any closer to the falling tree or the bear. Both of them came to a generally gentle landing, and the bear took off running to our left, zooming directly up the trunk of another tree on that side of the road. You could tell that the poor thing was in an absolute state of panic, and at first I assumed that this was because it had just survived the tree fall. That would shake anybody up, or so it would seem. Then again, I once saw footage on the local news about a lady here in New Jersey whose cat scared a bear up a tree. So I figure with bears sometimes being very skittish, It could have been almost anything that spooked him in the first place. Maybe a raccoon, maybe a rabbit. But there was something far more frightening in those woods on that night than any kind of rodent. And now, finally, he, she, or it makes their big appearance, leaping, running, and climbing over the felled tree. There scrambled another large creature. It was every bit the size of the black bear, possibly larger. It was covered in fur like the bear, but this fur was browner and longer than the bear's. Well, in spots at least. It seemed longest around the lower belly and the upper legs, and then again on the top of the head, down the neck and the upper shoulders, giving it sort of a lion's mane effect. This was not a cat, though. There was nothing feline about this creature. No, it was neither feline nor ursine. It was some third kind of thing. I mean, obviously it could not have been a bear, as I was seeing a bear, with the same eyes that I was seeing this thing with, and my eyes were assuring me that these were separate kinds of animals. "It's a werewolf," whispered my friend in the passenger seat, and I looked back at the creature, uncertain if I agreed with his classification. It was an animal, as far as I could tell, and not a human being. I suppose humans are animals too, so I should say it was an animal of a different kind from us. I always thought that werewolves were human, or part human. This was more like a big dog, or a prehistoric giant brown fox, maybe? It was more that than a wolf man. It did walk upright, and the American werewolf in London was down on all fours, so my friend wasn't off base with his classification. I just felt in the heat of the moment that we were witnessing a rare predator, one that at least sometimes hunts other predators. I did not see him as supernatural, although he, she, or it was as frightening and as fast as if it did have magical or paranormal abilities. Its eyes glowed, though, I can't deny that. That must be why my friend used the word werewolf, and why he clearly did think that we were seeing something closer to a ghost or alien than another forest animal like a black bear. The bear seemed to think he was overmatched, that's for sure, although, like I said, I saw a bear on the evening news one time that felt he was overmatched by a house cat. Then again, maybe that cat had supernatural powers, it's just a thought. So, the head of the manimal was very dog-like, with upright, pointed ears on top of its head. It ran, while holding its claws out in front of it, occasionally climbing with them. They had incredibly long and sharp-looking claws hanging out of the end, every bit as long as a bear's claws, possibly longer. They reminded me of images I'd seen of reconstructions of ancient prehistoric sloths. I don't think we were viewing a sloth of any kind. I'm just saying, imagine claws as long as those on an extinct giant sloth coming out of the front paws of this upright running dog. That's what I remember. I do not recall if the thing had thumbs or any of that stuff. I presume it did not. The way it sped across the tree was almost as though it were lighter than air. That isn't a perfect way to explain it, but it seemed to be able to move faster than any creature I'd observed up to then, or have observed since then. The entirety of all this stuff I'm trying to remember for you took maybe 10 or 12 seconds. I mean to say that once the bear touched down, through my buddy whispering that it was a werewolf, through to the dogman practically flying across the road and reaching the bottom of the tree that the bear was climbing up, all that took maybe 12 seconds total, probably not even that. The dogman slammed into the tree trunk hard, causing reverberations to swing the upper third of the tree fairly violently. The bear foolishly climbed even further up, to the even thinner part of the trunk, and it was clear it would break off sooner or later. The dogman was hugging the tree trunk and forcing it back and forth rhythmically. The bear was complaining loudly, in the way bears do when they are quite upset. Someone grabbed my shoulder and shook it. Coming out of my stunned reverie, I realized my pilot friend was still there. He calmly suggested that we back up out of there as slowly and quietly as we could, so as not to distract the dogman from his intended prey. That made sense to me. The longer we stayed there, the more of a chance something terrible would happen to us. The fact that this had to be pointed out to me illustrates how stunned I was in that moment. I really was a bit zombified by what I was witnessing. I had even lost touch with my fight or flight instinct. So at the suggestion of my friend, I drove in reverse until we got back to the main road, and we traveled the rest of the way to the airport in utter silence. He didn't seem to be in as much of a rush as he had been, and it was all I could do, just pay attention to the road and the wheel and the gas and the brake. And then, that was it. That friend and I drifted apart, and I never saw that dogman again. I never heard of anyone else seeing one near Toms River, New Jersey either, even though there are a couple of nature preserves right there in the vicinity. Did we even see a natural animal anyway? That's up for debate. I still lean toward thinking it was a flesh and blood beast, but I can't prove to you that it wasn't some sort of lycanthrope. The only thing I can tell you for sure is I saw a dogman chase a bear up a tree.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. You have a scary experience you want to tell us about? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.